You are getting sleepy. Throw a wrench into it. 4.3 V6 mods are up next. I've run a few things with 4.3 that are V6s. I like them. The one that I did the mods on to begin with, actually, I can't remember if I ran the turbo one of Jason's, which was an earlier one and not the balance shaft one. This was a pre-balance shaft, and he had a turbo on it. And he had the turbo set up. I think it was for a sand rail. So it was like a rear mounted turbo setup. And we ran it without the turbo on it, just ran an NA with that combination on it. And then put a small turbo on it, blow through carbureted deal. Worked pretty well. And then I did the one that I did actually for my friend's boat, 4.3 liter V6 with a balance shaft motor, which I like because it was nice and smooth. And I don't care about what kind of power output the balance shaft takes from it. I just like the fact that it's smooth. The heads are good on those. We ran a couple of different cams on it, small ones, and then a bigger one, a 224 cam, probably the Magnum cam, because that's the biggest one that they have. They don't have an extreme energy one. They should. I'm a little disappointed that they don't. But we ran that with the Edelbrock intake manifold and then a blow through with a Torque Storm, and that worked good. We ran it because we were running it as a blow through. I didn't set it up with an intercooler. That probably would have been beneficial given the fact that it made like 13 pounds because we had a giant, it was just a small block Chevy setup, but it had a giant crank pulley on it. And I don't remember if it was a 3.1 or a 3.3 or something like that, blower pulley on it. But the Torque Storm did well. It did what centrifugal superchargers always do. It had a rising boost curve, but had a lot. In fact, we let off early on that thing. If I take a look at that, we can kind of see where take a look at so the 4.3 liter made like 207 or 8 horsepower. And the peak torque was at whatever our starting RPM was. Then we put a cam in it, the 224 cam. It made like 250. And then with the Torque Storm supercharger, it made 450 or 60, 460 something. So it did good. And if we look at that boost curve, yeah, 3,600, it had 4.7 pounds. And at 5,800, which is where we shut it off at, it had 13.3 pounds. So you can see it was almost a 10-pound rise from 3,600 to 5,800 in 2,000 RPM. So it had about a 10-pound jump. Like I said, it just rises up and if we were to start this down 2,000, that number would be significantly lower. And that's like I said, I've run lots of them, Vortex and Pro Chargers and Torque Storms and even the Powerdyne stuff back in the day. Paxton superchargers, all of these. Centrifugal does what a centrifugal does. There's not one that does something different than that. What they do is going to be a function of their size and then how fast you spin it relative to the motor. And they're good. Like I said, I had nothing but good times with my Vortex supercharged Mustang back in the day at the Silver State and everywhere else that we took it. It was, it was very, very cool. But on the 4.3 liter, the question is, so far I've run some kind of 4.3 with the centrifugal blower. We've run one with a small turbo, or I'd like to revisit that. But what about with the M90? So I want to put the M90 on a 4.3 liter. I have one now. I have another one. We want to run that. Should I run that with the I have the one M90 that I can put a carburetor on. Should I just run a carburetor on it? Otherwise, we got to figure out some kind of EFI deal to do it. And I've kind of figured out something, but it would be so unique and one-off that I don't know if it would be, as applicable as if we just put the carburetor on top of that. I would cut the standoff that I have on that blower. I'd cut it shorter just so the carburetor is closer to the inlet of the blower. But I think that would be a good deal because then you could run that blower and I could cut the back of it off and flange it and it would be better. Or I could have the carburetor, I could use the other blower and use an adapter that I have that one of the viewers sent that allows me to put the carburetor going into the back of that. We know because the one that I did, we tested both versions of that and both of them work. So let me know what you guys would want to see. Which one of those configurations would you want to see? Would you want to see it EFI? Would you want to see it carbureted? And which carbureted way would you want to see it? Would you want to see the carburetor on top of the blower or feeding into the back of the blower? And like I said, when we did the test, they both made almost the same power. So I don't know that there was a big difference between those two, which kind of surprised me, quite honestly. But maybe the inlet size of the opening on the top of the blower offset the efficiency of feeding the blower from the back of the blower and using more of the lobes. I don't know. We just know what happened when we ran it. The 4.3 liter, I have that smoky manifold for it, which is good. I just need to get headers for it now, and then I can run it. We can start running it anyway. I want to run another cam with it and springs, and then we want to definitely run boost on it. I want to run another turbo on it, which would be very easy to do. We'll definitely try to do that. And I kind of would like to, I want to do the smoky manifold. I also figured out a way to run EFI on that without hopefully hurting the power output, which I'd like to do. We'd like to put the M90 on top of that, which could certainly be done with another plate. Tom can whip a plate up for that. I just need to send him the other plate. And we can get that done. And then, a single turbo would be good for that. I don't know if I want to go into porting the heads and that kind of stuff. It would make more power, obviously, but I think we can make enough power with the turbo stuff. The J series is better than the 4.3 liter. I can't be convinced otherwise. I don't think anybody thinks otherwise on that, since the factory J35 is probably 50 horsepower better than the 4.3 liter just to start out with. The interesting thing that I find something interesting about the 4.3 liter, and that's that the popularity of the 4.3 liter is huge. When I post stuff on the 4.3 liter, everybody loves it. So I don't understand why the people haven't addressed the market for that motor. And maybe they will, like when I complained that somebody should make 462 valve heads for years and years and years and years. And then somebody finally did. And I hope they sold a bajillion of them like I told them that they would, because nobody else has a market for that other than ported stock ones. And the 4.3 has the Brodix heads, but somebody needs to come out with an aluminum direct replacement better head, like an Airflow Research V6 head or something like that. Maybe the Brodix ones do that already. I don't know. I know that they're not readily available. You don't see them very often, but I'd like to see somebody have a whole bunch of those V6 heads. I think that they would sell a bunch of them. I just don't know how many it would take to offset whatever it would cost to make heads. I don't really have a feel for that. Would you like to see a carbureted M90 on the 4.3 liter V6? Oh, dang. Dang, Gina. Yeah, I would pick a J series over the 4.3 liter. Although, interestingly enough, the 4.3 liter in terms of viewership is not even close. The 4.3 liter, people like that way more than the doing something on a Honda J series. 4.3 is making with a cam what the J35 makes stock. And honestly, a J35, if it's rated at 250, might make more than 250 at the flywheel the way that we tested anyways. It might even be more than we think. It might be closer to 300. My opinion about the 4.3 liter is that it's a weak engine. The crank have oiling issues and has limit because of the offset journal. The intake gaskets may fail and allow the coolant to mix with oil. Is there anything else that do you like the color of it? Did you say the balance shaft makes less power? If you take the balance shaft out and you're not having to spin the balance shaft, more than likely it will make more power without that. I really want something one-off. Aren't the all the commercials I'm sending your way? Isn't that enough? I think injection's better. It's the injection where we're injecting it though isn't going to make more power because the running it through the blower would definitely make more power. Chevy 4.3 liter Vortec V6 is the Ford 300 of V6s. That's a good one though, right? My J32 Acura and my El Camino with the old 78 Smog LM1 350 both made 225 wheel horsepower. 225 is pretty stout. We started a conversation on turbo header length versus RPM for full boost response. Turbo Honda D16 having a turbo 1-inch off of the head versus a 30-inch 4-into-1 header resulted in a 1500 RPM lag in response. With the header, it did that. Blow through using the Super Coupe blower. Mount the blower on an AC accessory bracket and use the factory elbow outlet into a carb hat. You could do that too, except I don't have any M90s from a Super Coupe. I have lots of 3800 M90s. Have you ever done a comparison with a 4.3 liter V6 and a Vortec 4200? Yeah, I have those videos are already up. Mike has an all aluminum 4.3 race motor and pieces he's planning to put together. At 4.3, and the reason he sold it is because the intake gasket failed. Then learned that the factory injection system have issues. First and last rod journals may lack oiling. That's my opinion. Okay, that's good. Kyle, that's exactly what I'm going to use the Gen 2 Honda J engine to directly mount the turbo to the head, minimum boost threshold. I have a Vortec 4.3 liter V6 in my boat. It's a center console. I'd love to add either a supercharger or turbo. It's already had aftermarket internals put in it, about 225 horsepower naturally aspirated. You think that the Super Coupe and GM 3800 M90s would be the same? The rotor pack might be the same, but the blower housings are definitely not. Pittman, yeah, this is a marathon. I was here in the morning, full of information. Appreciate you and everyone who added something. Yeah, there's a lot of good guys here. And there's a few sketchy ones. Even the Chevy 2.8 liter V6 is a peppy engine. Are there aftermarket heads for the 4.3 liter? Yeah, like I mentioned, the Brodex guys made aluminum heads for that. I think Brule ported a set of the factory iron heads for when Freiberger did his V6 stuff way back. Would you like to see a carbureted M90 on the 4.3 liter V6? 81% are saying yes. Don't call me out like that. I'm not sketchy. You don't know that I was talking about you. I didn't say any names. Moving turbo further away from the exhaust made for later turbo response. So you think that you attribute that solely to distance and not to anything else, port size or shape or the exhaust or anything? Because no form of racing does that. Nobody mounts the turbo right next to the exhaust, not right next to the cylinder head. They all have turbo manifolds of some sort. So that's why I'm asking. I hope to see Ford versus Chevy 3.8 liter face-off. Oh, the Ford Super Coupe motor? You should try an M45 with M62 internals. I saw a spacer for this. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that the M90 and the 112 was a thing, but that's still problematic, though. I felt the vibe of annoyance at the EGR comment. The EGR comment was videos ago. The new Gen 5 base 4.3 doesn't suffer from the same flow issues as the old 4.3 and the 4200. Do you think the 4200 suffers from a flow problem? You don't think that 4-valve head flows good enough? If the 4.3 had multiple cam profiles, it would have been way more popular for modding. I think the M112 rotor pack will fit in the M90 as well. M112 is just longer on the same. Yeah, I think the diameter is the same. I think that that's what they're saying, that there's a... But the problem is, I don't know why you would take an M112 rotor pack and stick it in an M90 with spacers on it and not just put the 112 blower on. I mean, I don't understand that. I don't understand why that would be a thing. Did they do anything special to make the Typhoon and Cyclone more reliable? They made them in limited productions. A Gen 6 502 hydraulic roller from Teague Marine for $50. That's a good deal. And that's I've run that 502 cam. I think that that's the cam that we ran on the 8.1 liter. It worked good. And it is a good turbo cam. Are there any new intake options for the 4.3 liter? Not that I know of. My favorite mod for the 4.3 is a 350 swap or a 5.3, right? One of your videos is an hour and 1 second. I know, because you guys keep me late. So the next one's going to be 59 to make up for that. I run a non-balance shaft 4.3 with Vortec heads, a Comp 280, Eagle rods, and 10-to-1 diamond pistons. Do you have ported? Are the Vortec heads ported? Big crazy port job. 4200 is known to have issues getting the exhaust out. 235 and 160. I'm not concerned with that intake to exhaust flow relationship. I can tell you that a 4.3 head doesn't flow 235 CFM though. Your wife must really love you if she's letting you talk cars for 12 hours. This is my job. And she loves me. And I her. What do you guys think of built 4L60? Man, 4L60 Mad Dog Stage 4. That's all of it, right? Or 4L80 swap on a GMC 1500 4x4 that's getting some sauce. What motor is all of this? I would think most people are going to recommend a 4L80 rather than a 4L60. ported Vortex 20216. Did they come with like a 194 valve in there? A 194 and a 150 valve in there to begin with? No, forget it, man. It's too late. You already showed it. It's already written down. It's already official. The 101's official. And it has to have a 59 to cancel it out. LR4 4.8 Pro Charger D1SC low boost 600 wheel horsepower. It has a 4L60 now. Are you using it and driving it around like that? Is the balance of a V6 really an issue? Not for the balance shaft. I think that they did that just for NVH for guys to be happy with it. The balance shaft isn't there because it's going to help at at high RPM. In fact, it doesn't really. It's tuned for a much lower frequency than that. But we didn't take it out. I just left it in there. I didn't want to replace it, and it works fine for what we're doing. I like the Vortec motors. I like those heads. There are a few 59s already. Steve, all right, man. We'll see you. You guys have a good night. How many videos have we done? Is this number 11 right now? Please tell me it's 12. What's the best time to catch your live shows? The nighttime ones I do at 7 Pacific Standard Time. So that's 10 your time. 10 on the East Coast. I do them sometimes during the day too. This is only number 10. That can't be right. I need to be done by 8 o'clock. 8 to 8. That's 12. Except for the 5-minute delays for each one of those. And at 12 of those, that's a whole hour. It's actually number 8, yeah. Sure it is. Uber, claim your free meal, up to $15. No, thank you. I'm actually going to send some fuel rails off to the fuel rail guy and have them drill and ream for the injector holes. And they also have cool sliders, which I hadn't seen before, that slide into the slot of because I've seen the sliders that slide into the slots on the OEM ones and go around the bells on the factory fuel rails. But these guys have a little fork looking thing that slides into that slot and then has a hole in it. And then they drill and tap another hole to hold the injector in place. Because if you have a fuel rail with the injector not supported on the end of the fuel injector, it'll just pop out with fuel pressure. But this holds it in place. And I thought, dude, that's a really good idea. and they're the injector place. So I've made rails and pre-drilled the holes, small holes, so that they know where they go and what angle they go at. And so they can drill them, put those clips in there, and then drill and tap the ends for -6 or -8 lines, whatever size they need. You should do a viewer build rate episode. So I'm rating what the viewer built up. What class are kind of racing with the 4.3 liter when it was raced? They were running back in the day, although they had 5-liter versions of these. They were running what was called Busch Grand National back then because they had a V6 class. It was like NASCAR. They were like smaller NASCAR cars, although they might have been the same size, but they made a lot less power. They made and so they had these V6s that they raced in them, and that 4.3 liter was the basis for one of them. I now realize I missed the Geo update. I was waiting to ask if you plan to test any regrinds on it. I don't have any regrinds, but I would be open to doing that. The carb blower setup would be good to see on the 4.3. I've seen 2-inch valves in the 4.3s. Do you think that benefit the blown 4.3? I think if you could do something to improve the flow rate of the head, it's going to help the combination make more power. Also, can you intercool an M90? You don't really need to with drawing fuel through it the way that we're drawing fuel through it. So it will be intercooled with the charge cooling from the fuel. Sir, I'm sure you are aware running any turbo as close as possible to the manifold has compromises, always a trade-off. Yeah, I'm just curious. It makes sense, and I've had the OEMs have said that kind of stuff for a long time. Hey, we put the turbo like the Dodge guys did that back in the 80s. You know, the turbo, they made a log style manifold with no runner length on it. And we want the turbo as close to the exhaust valve as possible to get immediate spool. And I honestly don't know if that's optimum. I don't know if these other racing series that I'm talking about, if that's a consideration for them. I think turbo response would be a consideration, but maybe in where they're running with power output, that they're getting the kind of turbo response that they would get from the power output that they're getting. They're not worried about immediate response, like off idle kind of response. Eric, man, you're my guy. It asked me what kind of ads I want, and I just write in Eric. Some of the IMSA Fieros back in the day raced modified 4.3 liter V6s. I think Edelbrock makes a blower for the 3.6 Chrysler Pentastar. If I remember correctly, it wasn't impressive. I would kind of be surprised if they did that given that. Was that a popular application? How does F1 do their turbo setups? I haven't seen a turbo Formula One car in a really, really long time. I think the poorer flowing exhaust is a bigger problem on the early 4200s. And Calvin said to get an 06 and up head on it, which I have both of those. I have an 05 because of the block or whatever, and then the 06 because of the head. Add more cooling fins to the M90. Oh, the blower was made for the Jeep Wrangler. That would make sense because the Jeep application would be pretty popular. What is the right cam for the 4.3 liter? The cam that I would like would be like a 224, 232. It'd be like the cam that I want, that I have that I like in the 5-liter Ford and small block Chevys and stuff. Because that cam, given the bore and stroke of the 4.3 liter, is basically the same as the 350 small block Chevy. The power pulses will be different, but it should do what, based on the displacement, it should do what that cam does in a small block Chevy. F1, that's a cool tell, but then you have to kill the question. It's always easiest to copy what the $100 million funded race teams are doing. I'd love to see you in a Super Richie port job on something. I'm not a head porter though. I'm terrible at that. I mean, I've done some stuff like on the 3800, but I don't think I've ever done a full set of heads. Do you plan on uploading the Fox Body suspension upgrades when you try to do them? It actually already has a full suspension on it. It has a Kenny Brown suspension on it. It's got coilovers and all sorts of stuff. Although we might do this stuff with Bart. If I do the stuff with Bart, then we'll definitely do a video on that. Didn't Buick have a turbo V6 in Formula One back in the day? They had a turbo V6 in IndyCar, but not that I know of in Formula One. The M90 needs a cooling setup like the Demon Hellcat uses the air conditioning system to cool the intake charge. We ran the M90 with an intercooler before on the 3800, and they make that, but with the fuel going to it and the amount of boost it would be running, I don't think that that's going to be too much of a benefit. How does the full suspension ride on the Fox? I don't know. I've never driven it with this suspension on it. I installed the suspension, but it didn't have a motor in it when I did it. And it's sat ever since. I mean, I've run that car with other different suspensions on it, including Konis and springs and that kind of stuff. And I had previously put control arms that have roller bearings in them. So there's a lot of NVH transmission. And I also had for a while, I think that, well, it's not in there anymore. I had solid motor mounts on it too, which are not recommended. The rotor pack coating would flake off on my Eaton Chargers when they ran too hot. Yeah, that's what happens right before destruction. That's what happened on the AMR 500 that they ran, and has happened on a number of blowers that they've run on the blower dyno. Now, obviously, running the blower at whatever blower speed and boost level and flow rate that they're running it at for a minute at a time or whatever, so it stabilizes, it's not something that a lot of guys do anyway, particularly if you're trying to run it at very, very high boost levels and blower speeds, rotor speeds. So that's not something that guys do a lot unless you ran it at the Silver State. But that's what happens first is the rotor, the coating goes away, and then catastrophic kind of destruction, which is that's not fun. They didn't care about the AMR 500 because, because I paid for it for one thing. How's our poll doing? Would you like to see a carbureted M90 on the 4.3 liter V6? 79% are saying yes. Foxes aren't the best riding cars. No, they're not, especially when you put, shocks and springs and that kind of stuff on them. I liked my car the way it rode best when it was stock. But then after you do that, it certainly handles a lot better when you put suspension on it. Like when the guys from Maximum Motorsports did the 98 GT that I had, it was amazing. It rode very well, but cornered amazingly. I thought that they did a fantastic job on it. So, and I wouldn't mind seeing that kind of suspension on the Fox either. They did a really good job. %. Carbureted M90. Carbureted M90. Do you have a video out on head flow for the 4.3 liter V6? I don't know if I flowed those heads or not. I don't know if we flowed those. I don't know if I flowed either the Vortec. I know we didn't flow the turbo one because those were on the motor. And I don't think we flowed the Vortec heads either. The only flow numbers we would have would be from way back from Freiberger Steel. Our 4.3 liter Vortec heads the same as the 5.7. I don't know. Does anybody know? I don't know if you're very familiar with the Chevrolet VATS security system. I don't do any programming of stuff. So other than knowing what it is and knowing that it has the little thing in the key, my Corvette had that. And obviously this, the truck has it too. I think I run a standalone on a small block, I'd be able to avoid using the VAT system. Yeah, you could wire the ignition so that it doesn't require that. I had an M62 on a B18C. It's on my channel. The IAT would pull timing. It made less horsepower on the smaller pulley than it did on the larger pulley. 11 pounds versus 6 pounds on 93 octane. So how aggressive were you getting on the inlet air versus timing? Did you pull a whole bunch of timing? Why did the V12 small block Chevy use 1.5 V8s instead of two 4.3 liters? The final subject should be computer or cell phone. Oh, the poll should be that? See if I can dig up my D16 dyno jet test with the shortest possible manifold versus a 30-inch on the Turbonetics. That would be cool. That's a big change in RPM. Search for VATS bypass. It's a thing. That'd be nice, right? Just if you could just get rid of it. Just looking at my list. That just interrupts the injectors and the fuel pump. That's how it stops it from starting. It doesn't send a signal to the injectors and the fuel pump. What is a comfy horsepower limit for a well sorted out engine with an M90? What? It depends on what the engine is. Got to tell me about the engine. My 99 Denali has VATS issues. I need to go out and see if my truck will start. I haven't tried to do that today because I've been busy. This day and age, you got a free basket case 403. Nice. Free ones are good. Although, as we've talked about in the past, sometimes free is it's not the same as free. It's been 13 years since I built it, but it would run 30 degrees of timing all the way to red line on 6 psi. That seems like NA timing, which I don't think I would do on 6 psi. And 11 psi, it didn't like anything over 10. So the difference between 30 degrees and 10 degrees would basically be all the power. How often do you replace your car battery? I just replaced mine and didn't have to because there was nothing wrong with it. But 8 years is pretty good for a battery to last, especially batteries nowadays. They don't last nearly as long as they used to. Yeah, they cost more and they last less, which is not a good combination. 8 years is good. And with the way that this thing's been charging and discharging, I don't know that that's, I don't know what that's going to do to the life of the battery. I don't have high hopes for it. I think they just put enough inside the battery to make it start the first few times you start it, and then they just go, okay, now you're on your own. You're relying on your alternator from now on. If an anti-gravity battery wasn't expensive, I'd upgrade. There you go. get one of the gel batteries or one with Element 115. That's even better. I've only owned Aeromotive. Had you had good luck with MagnaFuel external pumps? I don't think I've ever run a MagnaFuel external pump. I think the guys from Westech might have had those long ago, but I've never run one. I'm still running my XS power battery for my car audio days. That was pretty critical if you're doing car audio stuff. You had to have some serious battery power. I don't buy 5-year batteries. I don't know what I'm doing in 5 years. So what I'm going to do is 7:17. We're going to cut this one a little short. That way I can still end by 8 o'clock, which I need to do. Would you like to see a carbureted M90 on the 4.3 liter V6? We're going to end that poll right now. And then we'll end the stream in 1 minute. And then we're going to do the last one until 8 o'clock. So what do you guys want the last subject matter to be? AGMs are expensive. Walmart Value Start batteries. You like those? There's no 2.2 news. Is Boost better than tea and biscuits? How about bangers and mash? What would you have with chips? Chips and what else? Popeye's biscuit. So we did the Torque Storm, turbo versus blower, tunnel ram, full exhaust, ice water, UFOs, always awesome. Bore versus stroke, turbo cams. Bangers and mash, not chips. .1 liter NA versus 6.0 for turbo or towing. That'd be good. What's the motivation for the marathon streaming? I've been wanting to do one for years, for more than a year anyway. ITB 4.3 liter. I've been wanting to do it with Chad, but we just couldn't get together. ITB 4.3 liter Zoomies. I have Zoomies coming on something. You should live stream some engine builds and assemblies. The problem is that the place where I'm building them doesn't have live stream capability. There's no service there. Do you have any experience with V8 swap Miatas? I haven't done the swapping. I've driven plenty of them, though. Cell phone to mobile hotspot to film. Even the cell phone doesn't have good reception there. Premiere those videos so you can live chat and answer questions. Ecotech versus Honda versus Toyota. But I don't have a lot of I don't have any Ecotec testing. I don't have any. I don't think I have any Toyota testing. Just Honda, at least on the engine dyno. But lots of Honda 4-cylinder stuff. All V6s sound terrible. Even the Ferrari V6, even the Dino. Okay, send you an Ecotec. Having a motor is not the problem. I can go to the wrecking yard and get that. That's easy. Toyota put a high revving cam and balance ITB 4.3 liter. I'm using cellular 13 miles out with a 76-foot tower in the woods. How did you find a 76-foot tower? You guys need to stop with the nonsense political bullshit. What's American Tower? A 76-foot tower is pretty big. That's pretty tall. That's more than 7 stories. $130 for 10-foot sections. So you want me to build the cell tower outside of Westech? Should you revive your Chevette? Yes, obviously. Chevettes are kind of awesome. And all Chevettes, front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive Chevettes are awesome. I did driver's ed in a Chevette. I can't. That's a good point. I can't remember what the thing is. I can't remember what the car was. The Alpha V6s did look cool with their polished intake manifolds. Didn't they have a front-wheel drive Chevette? I thought they did. Rear engine, rear drive subcompact. Why did I think that the Chevette was a front-wheel drive? It was only. Wow. Why did I think that they made a front-wheel drive version of that? See, that's why I come here and I learn. I know the Citation X11s, yeah. How about the $60 Walmart batteries? They have 6-month warranty. They usually last about 3 years. That's a good deal then, right? You guys didn't give me any ideas on what our last thing was. But on that note, we'll go over to our next one in 5 and 5. I've got some ideas.